Are you doing a destination wedding or are you in the thick of planning one? My name's Jo and I'm leaving for my destination wedding in less than 40 days. So today's video, we're going to be discussing tips and how to plan your perfect destination wedding. And if you're in the thick of it, maybe some things that you can consider. If you watched my previous video, I had 5 tips to planning your wedding. I'm going to break this video down into 6 different categories. Your vision of this event, the travel aspects, the resorts and how you choose it. This kind of goes with the travel portion, the vendors that you're choosing to create your vision, what you need to do with your guests, and how they play into this big event that's happening probably in another country. The vision of your wedding is really important. The way that you need to think about this is going to encompass a lot of the overall things that we're going to be talking about in this video. Is it going to be guest-centric? Are you doing a lot of these events because you think your guests are going to enjoy it? Or are you keeping it more couple-focused where the main thing is having just your wedding event and then letting everybody kind of chill? Or do you want to plan excursions or other events alongside in case people want to do their own thing? Or if people are expecting to be kind of taken care of for their whole trip? That kind of goes with one of the points that I said. Are they going to be expecting more than one event while they're there? I leave for my wedding in 40 days and it's going to be in Riviera Maya in Mexico. So for the wedding that I'm having with my husband, his name is Nate, and you can watch some of our other travel vlogs in the videos linked up here. We went with a very guest-centric vision of our wedding. I'm in my late 30s and he is too. So we've been to so many weddings that we kind of decided to create our own vision of what we think would be great for having everybody travel down for our big event and making sure that guests feel really special and they feel taken care of. And also, I'm not saying that everybody needs to do it the way that we're doing it. I'm just giving you some hints on a way that you might have considered or not considered. We are making some epic goodie bags. And what we're doing is we're going to have a tumbler, which is going to have customized everybody's name with a custom logo that I created on Canva. In the tumbler, we're going to have Pepto-Bismol, some Aleve, some Emergency, some sunscreen, and hand sanitizer. We're going to have about 115 guests. So this was not something that was cheap for the budget. I was able to work with one of my vendors and actually have Amazon Mexico deliver it to them. Not all vendors will allow this. A lot of people also use the local vendors to get customized names. I'm going to be making the customized names in the States before we go. Actually, next week, I might be making a video about that. And then what we're going to do is when we get there, we'll have our tumblers delivered and it's going to be a fun hour-long, very drunken, slap those stickers on and fill up those tumblers and get them out to the guests. The next thing is something that is actually taking up probably over 10% of our budget, but we felt it was really important because we are getting married in Riviera Maya and it's about an hour and a half from each airport, which is Tulum and Cancun. So what we decided to do was not have our guests find transportation on their own. So we are covering that. I didn't go through my travel coordinator on that, which I will get to. I'll kind of tell you the process that I'm doing in there. It's definitely a lot of work, but I am saving money. If I didn't do it this way, the budget would have been blown out of the water. Depending on the group of your wedding, you may be able to do some events kind of ad hoc wherever you want at the resort. So some people, instead of doing a cocktail hour that's a private cocktail hour, some people will just go to like the lobby bar, and that works great if your group is under 30 people. But for us, since we're over 100, we needed a private place, so we did pay a little bit extra for a cocktail hour. The other events that we're doing, our resort actually allowed us to do a 3-hour welcome party if we had over 100 guests. I'm doing a fusion wedding, so it's Indian American combo. So we are doing some Indian events, so we're going to have the Sangeet the night before. Guests will definitely still have free time. We didn't want to overpack the itinerary. Our events that we're hosting that are not on the wedding day are just basically in the evening. So people who come a little bit early can definitely enjoy all their free time during the day. One thing I wanted to ask for you guys, if you're doing a destination wedding or if you are planning to do one, tell me what your vision is in the comments below. Let's start a discussion. Next, we're going to move to the travel. Getting a travel coordinator is really critical to the success of getting your wedding booked, because one of the big things is room blocks. At my particular resort, which is Barcelo Maya, I'll link a video that you can see why we decided to go with this particular resort. But one of the only ways to really get your rooms kind of close together is doing a room block. So if you are staying at like a mega resort, it might be something that you want to consider. I also was able to lock in some rates from the year that I actually signed my contract for. So those rates never changed. The guests call them and make their reservation, or they can do it online. Also, you can make special requests through the travel coordinators, and they will basically talk to the hotel, so it does alleviate some of the stress. Some of the requests that we got were cribs and connecting rooms. Something that I see in a lot of forums is that people are a little bit surprised that when you do work with these coordinators, you have to put a deposit down on your room block. And it's not cheap. It's $150 per room. However, once you get all of your guests to actually sign for their rooms, you get that money back. They'll send it in a lump sum, or they can send it back as needed. We booked a ton of extra rooms because we just wanted to make sure that we had those rooms for us. They took our deposit and then they just used that to pay the room. So I got a nice refund back and our room was already paid for. It's kind of like girl math. My room was free and I got a refund. One of the things I'd mentioned is we are providing private transportation to our guests. Here was the thing. I could have gone through my travel coordinators for this, but they were going to charge $130 per person round trip. That's a lot. I was able to find some other vendors that are more local, and they are able to do it for $200 round trip for 1 to 9 people. It does kind of suck if there's only one person on a flight and we're doing one trip for them. But here's the thing, it's still kind of cheaper because at the end of the day, a lot of people are flying together. So that ends up saving a ton of money. But part of this whole doing it on my own, which my coordinators did say they can help me with it, but I just needed to be in charge of it because there's just too many people. And I know my family, they're not going to actually give the information through email. I reached out to all the guests and I just said, send me your itinerary by a certain day. That day is actually, as I'm recording, tomorrow. If people do not give me their flight information, then they will have to figure out their transportation on their own. That's the way that I'm doing it, and I made an amazing spreadsheet that I might share with you guys if you're planning on doing this, but the cost savings was so worth it, and I think our guests will really appreciate that all they have to do once they get on the plane is just relax and know that things are taken care of for them. So now the resort. I'm going through Barcella Maya Grand Resort, and it was really weird. The only thing I had to pay to hold my dates is $300 through a wire transfer. One thing I do like is that they are allowing us to pay with a card, no fees, when we get to the resort. I pay all my credit cards on time, and one of the best parts about it is I can get a ton of miles. So we'll use some of those miles for our honeymoon and just other future travels. One of the biggest things I've seen in a lot of these bridal forums is that they've secured the date and we want to start planning right away. And I'm not going to lie, I was one of those people. I'm like, I want to know everything that's going on. I want to know all the options. I want to know everything. Let's go. The real planning with the coordinators don't start happening till about 4 to 5 months till your big day. It's really hard for, again, type A people, but you can ask very general questions and start to get the ball rolling. But you also have to remember, these resorts are machines. So they know what they're doing. You feel like you're in really good hands once the planning process starts. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of get a little bit of paralysis in making the final decisions, which I was so excited to do it right in the beginning. But now I'm like, I have to pick up the menu now. It's all starting to fall through, but they definitely hold your hand and make sure it's a beautiful process. I'm actually very impressed. Currently, with my coordinator on site, we're doing bi-weekly calls. We were doing monthly calls for the first couple months, and then I would say the last couple weeks, we started going bi-weekly. When you're in the planning process, before you start working with your coordinator, obviously you're stalking the Instagram or you're going on, site visits, which we did not do, which we're just hoping for the best. But you have a vision of where you want your wedding to actually be held at the resort. A couple things. At my resort, I think there's only 1 or 2 venues that you can really kind of hold for your actual event, and that does require a deposit. It'll go towards the cost of your wedding, but you have to hold that down. Some weddings do actually have venue fees, which are not in the deposit. So that's something to consider, because if you're really liking a certain area, make sure you ask them, is there anything I have to pay for if I want a specific venue up front? Because if you don't do that, or you wait till you're about to be assigned, which I'll tell you about that, what your venues are, You might be disappointed and think, well, why didn't I know that I have to pay this? Ask them when you're putting your deposit down, when they're waiting for your money, is there any particular venue that I should be aware of that is off the table unless I put a deposit down? This can save you a lot of heartbreak and also start helping you plan a little bit more. So we are about 43 days from when I'm filming to our actual wedding. We just found out, I think last week, where our actual events were going to be held. This is something that we did not pay extra for to find a particular venue. We just were going with the flow, and we know the resort's gorgeous, so we're like, all right, whatever we get, we're going to make it work. They knocked it out of the park. When you're getting your venues, one of the things that I asked, which was really smart, my coordinator said that to me. I asked her, what's the rain plan? I'm getting married in November. That's at the end of rainy season, but it's still rainy season. And I don't know if you've been watching the news lately. There was a hurricane that just hit. So I think it is important. Ask them, what is my rain plan? And do I have options? My rain plan is going to be in like a theater because my wedding is actually during the day. We're doing a Western style ceremony, but we're still having it kind of be on the Indian timeline. Our rain plan for the evening is going to be in an adjacent palapa. So we're not at the same place that we're doing like my Sangeet. They did ask me if I wanted to do a ballroom or something else for my rain plan. And I said, absolutely no ballroom. I can do that in New Jersey. And they gave me the theater. I think it's also important to ask if there's other options of a rain plan. I'm so excited about our venues. They will ask you, do you want to be on the beach, in a ballroom, a palapa? Those are the types of things that they will ask you. Again, some of them might have upcharges. A lot of the terraces have upcharges. There's really no bad place to get married on a resort unless you don't want a beach wedding and you would want more of like a grassy, like gardeny type thing. When I was looking at Iberio Star, I really liked the mall area, and it's basically like a courtyard. There was another resort I was looking at, which was Dreams, and I really liked where they do the actual wedding ceremonies, and they also can put glass on a pool. But here's the thing that you have to keep in mind. When you're asking these questions, especially if you're gonna have a larger group or even a smaller group, they might not have those venues available for you. I was looking at Hard Rock a little bit. I just decided to not go with it because I've had friends who've had weddings there, and you can actually hear other events happening as they're going on. So that was a non-starter for me. But if you don't have enough people, regardless of paying a deposit, they might not let you have that space. Ask some questions before you put your deposit down. Next up, vendors. In the beginning stages, asking the coordinators who took your cash from your bank wire transfer or however you do your deposit, ask them for the contacts of the preferred vendors. Also join the Facebook group and see what the pricing catalogs look like for whatever package you're getting, or if they have a catalog of what they have available or things to kind of start budgeting appropriately. There can be some controversy with going in-house and out-of-house in terms of vendors. Most of the resorts will have really high vendor fees, and it's basically to cover their permits for working on the resort. It's annoying, but once you realize that you can get past it and there's a hurdle that can be jumped over, that's where you kind of just eat the cost, include it in what your overall cost of that particular vendor would be, and then price out the in-house. When we were looking at florals, the floral pricing from the in-house to the one that I decided to go with, it was about the same. It was not a crazy difference in cost at all. An in-house might have been potentially a little bit cheaper. I just preferred the service I was getting from my floral outside vendor. I decided to go with her, but it wasn't really a savings with the vendor fee included. If we're not considering the vendor fee, the outside vendor was cheaper. The DJ was another one. So my DJ is about the same cost as what would be using the in-house, obviously including the vendor fee. But the big thing for me is because I'm doing a fusion wedding, I wanted to have contact with my DJ and have a little bit more control. So that way we can add Indian songs, American songs, Spanish songs to just kind of make it a really fun event. I think that that worked out better with having a direct person. The other thing with in-house is that you don't know who you're going to get because they are staffed by a company. You don't necessarily know who's going to be assigned to you until close to the wedding. So in order to create that bond and, create that vision that we were talking about, it's going to be hard to do that if you're doing somebody in-house. So one thing I do recommend with the vendor situation, message in-house first, start finding out what their catalog pricing is. And then once you do that, then check out some other vendors. Go onto the Facebook page, see what brides have to say about vendors that they chose. A lot of times they might be a outside vendor. You can read their reviews and see what they thought in terms of working with them. My decor vendor, he's incredible. I have a really great relationship with him. He sees the vision that I'm going after. I know that I can trust him. Whereas when I'm talking talking to the in-house vendor, my emails just go unread for weeks and weeks and weeks. And we even have to get the coordinators involved. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's also about the service that you're going to have. And there's so many uncontrollables by being in another country. I think there's certain things that might be worth it for even the most laxed bride. One of the things that a lot of people like to do, especially like in Mexico, is kind of do that Tulum gorgeous thing, beachy wedding feel. That can actually be super pricey. Start doing your research sooner about the vendors. You don't necessarily need to book anybody but start getting those costs so you can figure out what's realistic in the budget that you're setting. And you might have to increase your budget because it might be worth it. If you don't do that and you start coming in blindly and you're just like, oh, well, I'll just see what the in-house does, it might be really expensive. And especially with creating this vision, you're now budgeting. Budget for how many guests that you realistically think will come. It might be less, it might be more, but at least you're in the ballpark and you know what decor you're going to have, what florals you're going to have, and things like that. The vendors that you're going to want to consider are decor, florals, photo, video, DJ, and hair and makeup. A lot of the resorts already have a in-house salon. I am using them for one of my events, but I did pay a vendor fee to have them come so my bridesmaids can get their hair done and my moms, like my mom and my mother-in-law. But you also can see if there's beauty trucks available that can save you a vendor fee. They're generally going to be higher in price, but they might be able to do your vision better because, again, you don't know who's going to be doing your makeup and hair that day. We are using a couple of the resort's preferred vendors. I'm going to do for my henna or mehndi. I'm using them. And then I'm also using the mariachi band. We're going to do a dole, which is like an Indian drum. So now we're going to get to the guest portion and how to have great communication with your guests. These might be things that you're already doing or things that you're like, that's not going to work for my group. I'm just going to give you my experience. Take from it what you want. One of the big things is sending a save the date out. I sent my save the date out about 11 months before the wedding, but obviously nobody heard me shut up about it since I actually booked the venue. We sent out this super cute magnet and it looks like a boarding pass, which I will show everybody after the wedding. I recommend a longer time frame of sending a save the date out opposed to what would be a stateside local wedding. And I do think it's important to maybe do it the year prior so that way if people are planning to figure out their PTO, they can start mapping it out soon enough and budget for it. I invited everybody that I would have invited to my normal wedding if it was down the street. It's really hard to have an A and B list when you're doing a destination wedding because people need to book their rooms, people need to book their flights, and people need to take time off. This is not something that someone's going to show up for a day and leave. We sent out about 350 invites and we have about 115 going. It's perfectly in line with what I was kind of hoping for, but I budgeted for about 200. So I'm technically saving. Again, girl math. And you might be surprised with who ends up saying yes. And I think that's the funnest part because you never know who wants a vacation and will throw a wedding in there. Gives people a reason to escape. So don't do an A/B list, just send it out and see who comes and it'll be epic. Something that I've seen in some forums is brides have really interesting RSVP dates. There were some brides that were asking for RSVPs with booked rooms and flights 9 months in advance. There's not even all the plane routes down by then. We did about 3 months, which I still felt was pretty much in advance, but we did need to know it so we can figure out which venues we were going to be in. The guest count so the resort can figure out where to put your group. I will say that 9 months is a little tough and you might have people who are maybes who are now afraid to see if there's room. And you can be realistic with this by talking to your travel coordinator and making sure that you're good to go. The other thing that I'm going to say, which is going to be controversial, but I don't think digital invites are effective, at least for my group. I don't check my email either. I have missed so many emails from vendors because I don't even check my email anymore. Something about people getting like a digital magnet that had a QR code that linked straight to our wedding website meant something to people. We definitely know people clicked on it and they were able to see more events if they were curious, but actually having something physical that people can use and see was really important. Also with our invitations, same thing. By actually sending them out, we had a couple of options on the return RSVP card, which was I'm booking my room outside of the room block. I'm planning to book my room or I already have. And that was easy for us to follow up. We also had in there to email me their flight information so we could get some of that transportation stuff started. In our invitation as well, we had our whole itinerary, which was great. So people could see the events with the days in case they wanted to book an excursion. But also like if you weren't able to come on Wednesday, like what were you missing? Last thing I want to talk about is budget. When I first started initially planning, when when I was in the talks with my travel coordinators, I had a thought that I was like, oh, it's going to be like crazy cheap. I thought, well, I'm just getting married at a resort. We're already paying for the food. What's the big whoop? Like, what do we need them to do? And then you start to really understand there's a lot that goes into these weddings. It's not just one coordinator. They've even told me there's going to be a team of people really working through with us. There's so many bartenders that are going to be dedicated to your events, also cleanup, setup staff, everything. So it is something to be realistic, and you can get that realistic vibe from a travel coordinator. So now that your budget has been level set, I think that now it's important to give that level set budget an actual buffer. And that's where I was planning for about 200 guests and about 115 are coming. That buffer allowed me to have some flexibility with what I wanted the vision to be. I'm excited to share with you once we have our wedding, everything that we're doing, and I think it's going to be really pretty, but it really felt good that we didn't go over what we were planning to spend because we had already mentally set that money aside. So one of the other things with budget is it's a wedding and it's yours, and it's going to be extremely special and it's going to be gorgeous, especially if you're doing it in Mexico or the Caribbean, because hello, did you see that backdrop? If there's something that you want and you think is important, see if there's a way to budget it in. Also, if it's something that doesn't really matter, like I will tell you this, I am not doing a photo booth. I just decided that is not worth my money and I can spend that somewhere else, or I can just pocket it. So just keep things in mind of what's important to you. Try to keep that realistic. It's still your wedding and you are going to be amazing. So in this video today, we covered a lot. We're covering the vision of how you want the feel of your wedding to be. We talked about the travel aspect, whether that's working with a travel coordinator, getting room blocks and helping you pick out a resort, the actual resort. So once you put a deposit down, what do you need to do? Are you finding that you need to put a deposit down on a venue, or just knowing what's going to be available for your group size? The vendors inside and outside the resort. Are you planning to use somebody in-house or just get their pricing, see what it's like? Does it work with you? Or are you going to pay a fee like I did and get who you want? Communication with your guests, which is so important. How do you see it? If your group is great with digital, awesome. Mine, not so much. And last but certainly not least, have a realistic budget and create a beautiful event within your means and have so much fun. My name's Jo and I'm so excited. We are going to have so much more wedding content coming up in the next couple months because it's going to take me a while to actually upload things, but I'm very excited. Thank you so much. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.